What?
I'm going to mute this. That just has to be like that too.
Hello, I'm Dan Fruit, Chair of the Department of World Arts and Cultures and Dance here at UCLA. There is no more significant rite of passage in our department than the Senior Project, an opportunity for students to cap off their research on departmental themes.
Hi, I'm David Geer, a professor in the department and a big supporter of the Senior Project concept. This year's projects by WAC majors cover a huge range of topics, from the culture of meat eating to the meaning of truth, from magical realism to a meditation on allyship, and from an ancient Persian inscription to a consideration of HIV and fraternity culture at UCLA.
In each case, these senior projects weave together the personal and the political in ways that underline the WAC degree's 3 tracks: arts activism, critical ethnographies, and visual cultures. It has been an honor for us as professors in this department to work so closely with this group of compassionate, talented, and engaged students, and to see their work blossom.
In most years, the culminating WAC senior projects would be offered as live presentations and exhibitions in Kaufman Hall or elsewhere on campus. This year, however, ta-da, you've been invited to participate via Zoom or YouTube. Thank you for joining. The presentations will take about an hour. Please stay afterward for a live Q&A.
One of the key strengths of the World Arts and Cultures major is its focus on food and food cultures. Lauren Dickstein takes a closer look at the food norms that have influenced her life up till now, with a view to forging a new, and for her, healthier path forward. Her story begins, appropriately enough, in the kitchen.
Come on, kids, time for dinner. Dad's waiting. Each time I heard this growing up, I knew exactly what it would mean and exactly what I would be told. What kid doesn't love being called to the dinner table? I knew I did, but you see, in my family, it was a little bit more complicated. Each time I got called to the dinner table, my father would tell me the exact same thing. Make sure you eat your protein, he would say, and make sure half your plate is always green, he would add. But unfortunately, I never knew just how important it was to eat my greens, and one message only really stuck. It was that protein, animal protein that is at the core of every meal, and a meal just isn't complete without it. It was ingrained from a young age to never leave behind any meat, dairy, fish, or egg products. You just didn't. These were cream of the crop. I even had this image in the back of my mind of my disappointed grandma tossing the remnants of my leftover meatballs in the trash. I mean, come on, who wants to disappoint their grandma? I knew I didn't, so I ate my meat. I would wake up the next morning in a complete daze. I usually didn't wake up with much energy anyways, but I was especially tired after eating all of that meat and dairy the night before, and I definitely wasn't ready for my soccer tournament. Quite frankly, I hated soccer. Watching all the other little girls prance around the field as if they were on a permanent sugar high, while I, on the other hand, was sluggish and lethargic. I could barely even move. That's just the way it is, I thought, after I quit the soccer team and started to devise strategic methods as to how I could avoid physical activity for the rest of my life. I got out of PE and went to the nurse, and I told my mom no more sports for me. So I thought I was cool, chilling, gliding through life until the real world struck, and I was very wrong. College time came, and these campuses are no joke. I was admitted to my dream school, UCLA, but I didn't realize what it would come with. I had to walk 25 minutes just to get to my first class, and by the time I arrived, I was tired, out of breath, and sweaty, and definitely not ready to learn. I would struggle with this for 3 years until I found my solution. I had always wanted to keep up with the other kids and students and just thought everyone was going through the same thing. But it wasn't until I found my fix that let me have more energy and better physical performance through campus. This fix involved changing my diet. Who would have ever thought that something so simple as diet could affect the entire way that I felt? So basically, all I had to do was switch my protein source from animal-based proteins to plant-based proteins so that I could receive the plant advantages. Plant advantages are basically just advantages coming from plants, and I'm going to tell you more about these plant advantages. Plant advantages don't just sound cool, but they actually are. At first, I was in disbelief that simply switching my diet could improve my energy and enhance my overall quality of life. But after reaping the benefits of a plant-based diet firsthand, I won't ever go back. One of my favorite plant advantages is combating the food coma. I personally struggled with the food coma the most since practically every time I ate a meal, I would feel bloated and fatigued, no matter how much I counted fats, sugars, and carbs. But soon I realized that these concerns were misguided and that it was really the source of the protein that affects our body's bloating and inflammation. I didn't realize that the human body had no natural adaptations to digest animal proteins, such as those found in chicken, meat, dairy, fish, and eggs, which is why our bodies maintain a level of inflammation when processing these animal proteins. In addition, prolonged inflammation can have a negative impact on our daily physical performance and also cause damage to our muscles and tissues. Animal proteins are inherently packed with pro-inflammatory compounds, such as bacterial endotoxins and hema iron, whereas on the other hand, plant-based proteins are inherently packed with anti-inflammatory compounds, such as antioxidants. If research shows that plants have on average 64 times the antioxidant content as animal proteins, and research also shows that if you switch to a plant-based diet, you can reduce inflammation in your body by 29% in just 3 weeks. Wouldn't you want that PlantVantage too? The PlantVantages don't stop there. A plant-based diet can also help with blood flow, which is the way that oxygen and nutrients reach the cells in our muscles, body, and brain. Animal protein is proven to thicken the blood, thus slowing the flow of oxygen and nutrients, whereas a plant-based diet allows for free-flowing blood and has compounds that signal for dilated blood vessels. Blood flow has huge implications on our physical performance, ability to wake up less foggy in the morning, and replenishing our muscles so that we can do physical activity without feeling fatigued. If research shows that just 2 hours after eating an animal-based meal, our arteries can constrict by 40%, while a plant-based diet allows for free-flowing blood and dilated vessels, wouldn't you want that PlantVantage too? Man, I wish I knew about the PlantVantages when I was quitting the soccer team. Although I didn't know about the PlantVantages back then, it's not too late for me to grab hold and take advantage of them, and it's not too late for you too. Fear not, you don't have to radically change your entire diet in order to benefit from the PlantVantages. I'm just here to remind you of what you already know. Eat your greens, and don't feel compelled by that animal protein because a meal can be complete without it. Why don't you try it at your next meal and let me know if rethinking food can brighten your mood.
Thanks, Lauren. On account of your research, my family is trying vegetarianism at home. Ovie, always precocious, wrote her first memoir in the 5th grade. For her senior project, she's embarked on a writing practice that has all the qualities of a memoir, but which is also an ethnographic investigation of family and of the slippery nature of truth. Whose version of her parents' early relationship is the accurate one, if either? Ovie invites you to decide for yourself.
I have a scar in the center of my forehead. I'm not sure exactly how it got there. As the story goes, I was learning to walk in my driveway when I tripped and fell. My head crashed to the ground and a tiny pebble stuck in the skin, denting it for all of eternity. If you ask my mom, it was my dad's fault. If you ask him, it was hers. Growing up, the two differed on their opinions so much, I learned to live in two separate realities, each governed by my parents' own personal perspective of the world around them. I never know how to best describe my childhood. I could talk about the birth of my siblings, lemonade stands in the front yard that ran in the red, bikes, scooters, Girl Scouts, and soccer. In reality, my childhood is best remembered in flashes of life's various moments. Or I could talk about the visits to different therapy offices, the nights spent sitting on the kitchen floor in gripping silence, phone calls, the court dates, the fear best personified by a fist-sized knot in the center of my stomach. As my dad said, and there was a period of time, like when you were first born and we had bought the house in Pacifica, we had it going on, sorta. We had a family, we had you, we had a dog, we had a house. My parents divorced when I was 2. As expected, my memories of them together, happily married, have long faded. If, of course, they were ever there to begin with. My mom said, "Your dad and I were secretly engaged. He got down on one knee and he said, 'Will you marry me?' And I said, 'Yes.' And then I said, 'But we can't tell anyone now because we don't want to steal Caroline and Matt's thunder.' After all, it was their engagement party. My mom suffers from bipolar disorder. Growing up, this confused me. I didn't understand what exactly it meant, but I saw the difference it made and how she was treated. I was told if I didn't act properly, then I would suffer the same tragic fate, the lifelong curse of being labeled crazy. Dad. And I liked your mom. She was cool, but I don't think she was the one for me, you know? I was kind of looking for a way to get out of it. Regardless of what happened, I think there were just too many differences there. That's what started me on this journey, some desperate need to know my own origin in as much of an objective truth as humanly possible. I spent the past 2 quarters interviewing both my mom and dad on their perspective of my creation. Mom. It was the second time that he had asked me to marry him. The first time he said to me, "I'm not the kind of guy to get down on one knee and propose." And I said, "Well, why not?" And I turned around and he was on one knee and he said, "Karen Rosen, will you marry me? Not for a while." And I thought that was a bad proposal with the "not for a while" in there. So I said, "You don't want me to answer that question." Dad. It was more of a convenience thing than anything. I hate to say that, but it's kind of the truth. We liked each other and I liked being with her more than not being with her. I heard many different stories. Some so familiar we could recite them in unison. Others challenged histories deep in my identity. As expected, each person's perspective was unique, meaning they overlapped in some senses and directly contrasted in others. Mom. Midway through the wedding party, he said for everyone to look at how beautiful I was and how he loved me. It was nice, but it was pretty embarrassing as well. I like attention, but not to be the center of attention. I always said I would elope. Didn't want my family around, didn't want to be the center of my family. Maybe I would have liked a wedding if I didn't have to invite my family. Though I started this project in search for some singular and objective nugget of truth, I found the more I explored, the more intricate and connected my own narrative became. More than that, I found the intersections to be much deeper and less tangible than previously believed. Dad. It was sad. I kind of always wanted to have a family, and I kind of had that, and then it got ripped away, you know? Maybe that's the nature of human memory, or indicative of some larger human experience. The story that I want to tell you today and the world tomorrow is one that is less defined by the inherent contradiction of my parents' back and forth he said, she said, as I heard enough of that growing up anyway. Instead, I want to highlight a greater story that sits without the restriction of assigned definitions. My whole life, I saw the world and truth to be easily defined upon some sort of linear field of morality. Shaped by their constant contradictions and attacks on one another's characters, whoever led in the futile fight toward my custodial care must be better suited to be my parent. For a long time, I believed it was impossible to love them both. That may sound silly, especially because they both tried so hard to love me, but they couldn't hide their own hate. What do you do when the 2 people who you love the most hate one another? Mom. I would say no one knew about the pregnancy yet, but that wasn't true. When I told Grandma Marie that I was going to get married, I also told her that I was pregnant. They tried in the past to talk me out of being with your dad. I remember this one woman. What was her name? Anyway, not important. She and Grandma Marie sandwiched me at a holiday dinner and told me to find someone with money. I felt a little bit intimidated as I replied that I had found my cowboy. My mom taught me how to tie my shoes with 2 bunny ears after my dad taught me with 1. She admitted the one way may have been better, but she was upset that he taught me how to tie my shoes before she did. For years, I tied one shoe her way, the other his, my naive pledge to love my parents fairly, equally, but most important, separately. When I remember my mom, I remember the things she taught me. She taught me how to glare at people and to always have a big pair of sunglasses in case you need to cry in public. She taught me to love animals and everyone around you, and she loved me so much it almost felt like I didn't need to do it myself. Some days, my mom moved very quickly. Others, it was very slow. When I was young, she drove a Subaru Outback and smoked cigarettes. She drank wine at dinner, and when I grew tired of waiting for her to finish, she would ask for a to-go cup for my soda, and she would drink it in the car. Dad, you loved your mom, and no matter what happened, you were always her main priority. And you were always my main priority too, so you were lucky in that respect. You were always loved. My dad showed me pain. He showed me that just because you could smile and pretend nothing happened by not talking about it, didn't make it go away, and really didn't do much of anything, least of all make it better. He taught me how to play sports and did a pretty good job of pretending I was good at them. He taught me about skiing and why you should never eat yellow snow. He taught me how to drive, but he probably wished he hadn't. My dad's hair turned gray quickly, but he never looked old. He and my mom both cried more frequently than I, though to be honest, that isn't saying much. My parents taught me so much, as did this project, as did all my years of school, time spent with friends, and the inevitable process of making mistakes. I can't say which parent taught me more or how that everyday monotony of my own past life has shaped the present. Ironically, I began this project seeking my own truth within theirs. What I found instead was my own truth was entirely separate the whole time. One day, I hope to share my version of events with the world. What this project and the World Arts and Cultures program did teach me was the ambiguity of the human experience. I learned that expectations rarely match reality, perspectives change in dynamic waves, just like the weather or the tide, and at the end of the day, my parents tried their hardest to love me, even if it didn't always feel that way. I stopped the video. Oh my God, I'm still on.
Ovie, thanks for your extremely provocative project, which reminds me of Kurosawa's film Rashomon. For his senior project, Kenny Sanchez created a film to an 8-minute musical score by Pauline Oliveros that references the Greek myth of Icarus, the boy who made wings from feathers and wax and then flew too close to the sun. Inspired by the surrealist Salvador Dali, as well as the rich traditions of Latin American magical realism, Kenny initially intended Icaro as a live performance. But when the quarantine began and live performance became impossible, he found everything he needed for this film within the confines of his childhood bedroom.
Kenny, I love how you worked within the constraints of safer at home to make your film. Jacob Bonger's presentation builds on his time in the UCLA Sex Squad, working with his friend and mentor, Bobby Gordon. As a student in the Department of World Arts and Cultures and Dance, Jacob has been thinking long and hard about what it means to be an ally. Is allyship the same as friendship? What role does empathy play? And is it ever possible for one person to truly understand another?
One of my earliest memories of being an ally was a middle school hangout session with my best friend Steve. I remember us laughing, me getting infuriated at his video game prowess, and a general air of joy. Then, all of a sudden, after one particular game, Steve suddenly turned to me and said that he had something very important to tell me. And just like that, the entire atmosphere of the room suddenly shifted. My young brain raced with thoughts of what he was about to say. Was he moving away? Something happened with his parents? I even wondered if I'd gone a bit too far with some of my playful insults during a particularly brutal ass-kicking I'd been receiving in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Then, with a slight bit of hesitance, he said what was on his mind. I like guys. Immediately, all the tension evacuated from my body, and I proceeded to chuckle, asking him why that was so important to tell me. I like guys too. He proceeded to laugh, rolling his eyes as if he could have predicted that I would give him such a stupid response. But then, he went on to explain that he was both physically and emotionally attracted to other men. The gears in my 7th grader brain began to click. And a few beats of silence followed, before I suddenly picked up the controller on the floor and handed it to him. Oh, that's cool. Do you want to go another round? Thinking back on this moment, my mind fixates on an extremely important question. Why was it so hard for him to tell me that he was gay? And more importantly, why was it so difficult for me to respond to be an ally? When I think about these questions, it takes me back to an experience I had back in high school during my first ever Tinder date. I remember it was just after a particularly bad breakup, and due to an increasing feeling of intense loneliness, I decided to try out Tinder. And before you ask, yes, I was 18 at the time, so it was all good. Anyways, after several hours, I finally matched. And after talking for a bit, we decided to go on a date that weekend. That Saturday, when I arrived at the movie theater, I walked over with a single rose in hand, as I was quite the doubly romantic back in my high school days, and to some extent I still am now, and held their hand in mine. However, it appeared that they had something on their mind. And when I pressed them about it, they sighed and told me that they were transsexual. And I will not lie to you. As an 18-year-old, I was scared and confused by what that meant. I could see the emotions on my face clear as day, and told me that if I wanted to leave, I could. And I nearly did. And the fact that I almost did brings me a deep amount of shame thinking back on it. And that's when I realized why it was so difficult for Steve to come out to me. Why he sounded so hesitant in the delivery of that declaration. He was afraid that I would leave. That I would see him in a way that would ruin our friendship forever. Because a declaration like that has an unfathomable amount of weight to it. Because words like that, depending on who they're spoken to, can be met with drastically different responses. Violence even. However, after processing the comment for a few moments, I handed the individual the rose and smiled, asking them why I would want to leave and ruin our lovely movie date, offering my arm and leading them off towards our seats. Bear in mind, this was not done out of pity. Rather, I decided to stay because I felt that we would have a genuinely nice time together. because of my own personal philosophy, never to judge someone before I've hung out with them. And you know what? We had a really, really good time. I mean, the movie itself was terrible, but I mean, we shared some laughs talking about how crappy it was, so hills and valleys. We kept in touch for a few weeks after, but mostly fell out due to them moving away for work and me starting my freshman year at UCLA. And while I look back at my initial response to their declaration with a great amount of shame, I'm proud of my past self for not leaving. I feel that that experience ultimately strengthened my abilities as an ally. Now, for the million-dollar question, what does being an ally mean to you? Well, let's start by what other people think about this subject. Some individuals view friendship and allyship as two separate things, claiming that friendship is something that happens through chance and are usually bound together through shared interests and hobbies, while allyship is a cause that you've taken up to support others that you may not even know. Others say to be an ally is to take action, rather than to sit passively and wait for an issue to be resolved. But to me, being an ally is being present. It means taking the time to understand a trauma that you yourself will never experience. It means going to events and waving signs around and demanding for a change. Because nothing gets accomplished through words alone. Actions speak louder than words. Action is the gasoline that fuels the flames of the monster truck that is revolution. To be an ally is to take action in whatever form you can take. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. Because that is what it means to be an ally. Now, the most recent experience that I've had in relation to allyship would be supporting my now ex-girlfriend through the haunting trauma that is sexual assault. And while my feelings of romantic love for her have faded from my heart, I will always appreciate the time we spent together. Mainly because it taught me a very important lesson about allyship. Sometimes you won't always know the right words. Sometimes you won't know the right way to comfort someone, to make them feel like you understand what they're going through, even though it's something that you have never experienced in depth. It means that sometimes you can't help someone. You can't force someone to let you in. You have to accept that sometimes you can try as hard as you can to be understanding as well as loving. And sometimes you just can't accomplish what you set out to do. You shouldn't try to fix everyone. You should try to be their ally. And that's kind of something I've been struggling with for a lot of my life. It's feeling like I have to fix someone, and confusing that with being an actual ally. And that is why I'm grateful for our time together. Because it has showed me that being an ally doesn't mean that you fix people. It means that you're supporting people, that you're there for them. And I'll be eternally grateful for the wisdom that she unknowingly granted to me. Other than her, there's been one other individual with whom I've allied myself with in my recent time in the UCLA WAC department. I met Kelly in one of my classes back in late 2017 as a part of the UCLA Sex Squad, which was directed by my friend and mentor, Bobby Gordon. I recall a brief conversation before class started, and I remember being drawn in by her optimistic and upbeat attitude. But then, during our first class session, Kelly made the brave decision to reveal to us that she was HIV positive. And all at once, I saw her in this new light, but not in the way that you'd expect. She suddenly became the bravest person I had ever seen, and I instantly began viewing her as a role model, and later as an older sister. During our time together in WAC, our relationship as friends blossomed. Although I would have to say that our friendship truly hit the next level at AIDS WAC, which is an event used to raise money for HIV and AIDS research and care. Now, while I'm not what you would call the most athletic person in the world, I remember being extremely fired up during this event. Mainly because I've been talking to Kelly about how I'd be one of the individuals holding up the sign that we made during our time in UCLA Sex Squad. And she smiled and laughed at me, telling me to give it my all, because I would be representing the UCLA Sex Squad by holding that sign. And you're damn sure that I was shouting and waving that sign around like my life depended on it. But part of the reason why I was so pumped up and into it was because I knew that this event was raising money for something that was affecting someone close to me. Someone I consider as both a role model and, as I said before, an older sister. So I asked myself, would I have been as passionate if I didn't know she had it? Or if no one in the Sex Squad had it? I would still say yes, because Sex Squad informed me of what a massive problem the AIDS epidemic is. And I will fight tooth and nail if it means that a cure can be found. My mind, it's already been opened, unlocked. Once the floodgates have been opened, it's hard to stop the flow of revolution. So, what does being an ally mean to me? Is it accepting your friend for who he is? Is it waving a flag around and demanding for change? Or is it accepting and embracing your own shortcomings as an ally in order to truly improve as one? It is all that and so much more. And I personally argue that friendship and allyship are inherently intertwined with one another, as it takes a great amount of commitment to stick your neck out for someone, even if you don't know them. To be an ally is to be a friend, and the main job of any friend is to look out for those close to them. Until my last breath, I will fight tooth and nail if it means that my friends, family, acquaintances, and even random strangers on the street are treated with love and dignity that we all deserve.
Jacob, thanks for using your WAC studies to open up the space for both empathy and activism. When Abigail Shayagan moved to the United States from Iran, she brought with her a deep knowledge of Persian language, culture, and history. In Los Angeles, far from her place of birth, she has nurtured these essential aspects of herself, ultimately writing a meditation on motherhood and on an ancient clay foundation stone, known here in the West as the Cyrus cylinder. What can mothers and an ancient Persian inscription teach us about human rights?
Immigration stirs up mixed feeling in me. You give up what you have in your motherland to gain a better life in a new country, but it's not as easy and as perfect as it sounds. Immigration is in many shades of gray rather than in black and white. Little by little, you grow and you figure out the reality of living in another country. You learn how people and the government might see you as a foreigner in your very own home. You become a citizen, but your family, your homeland, your past, everything that has shaped you into who you are makes you an outsider. As a child, growing up in Iran, I went to schools where shouting "Death to America" and stomping on the American flag were part of the school's curriculum. But at home, I was lucky to have an amazing teacher, my mother, a wise, kind mother who wears hijab but accepts me, her non-hijab wearing daughter, as I am. She taught me how to love even those who are different from me. She would always explain that shouting this to Americans and stomping on the American flag were wrong. Why? I would ask my mom. Because the flag represents an entire nation's people, not only its government. Kim Metcalf was my first professor when I started college in America. If it wasn't for her support, I wouldn't be here today. Kim lost her only child, Abigail, in an accident a few years before I met her. I don't teach English, she told me in her kind voice while playing with her long black hair. But you can still learn English in my class as we go forward. Don't be afraid, you will be fine. She was caring, she was kind, she respected my accent, she adored my kids. Gradually, Kim and I chose to be mother and daughter. We chose to be part of a human family together. My kids call her grandma. I adopted the name Abigail, and I am blessed to feel the joy in my mom's voice every time she calls me Abby. When calling two people mom felt confusing, Kim told me, I know you already have the most amazing mom, but I am going to be your American mom. When I told my biological mother about Kim, you know what she said? She told me that she was proud of me for being there for a mother who had lost her only child. These two people have never met each other. They don't even know each other's language, but they have become close. My two countries have been each other's enemies as long as I remember. Their approaches toward each other have shaped policies that have caused unnecessary harm to the people of both countries. Although sometimes we are forced to follow the politician's rule, but I resist the idea of President Trump or the Iranian regime representing us. You know what? My moms represent me and my two nations. President Trump's travel ban, along with the imposition of highest sanctions ever meted out on another country, has left the people of my homeland helpless victims of inflation, unemployment, and shortage of food and medicine. The ban has also deprived my children of ever having their grandparents in their home for a sleepover. In my senior project paper, which you can find as a link on the Senior Showcase website, I talk about how I wish the people of my two countries could see each other's like my two moms do. The next time you want to compare the West with the rest of the world, I urge you to remember that the West is the West because of the rest, not just wealth, but also human rights, civilization, and the very idea of democracy have been transferred from the rest of the world to the West. The West's flow to global supremacy is a recent and dependent historical result. I am not here to argue for the supremacy of the East over the West. I am here to remind us that we are all human and that no one is supreme to the other because of race, the place they were born, or the place they call home. The fact is that the United States and Europe see the East through the lens of Greek, a lens that has resulted in the Latinization of the names of our ancestors. The Greek changed the Persian name Kurosh to the Greek name Cyrus, Dariush to Dyrus, Westerners continue to demonstrate the stereotype of otherness by creating movies such as 300. 300 is an exotic 2007 film about a battle between ancient Persia and Greek. This movie was produced in 21st century, so the West continues to expand the fearful ideology of Orientalism. Edward Said says, Orientalism is the imitation or depiction of aspects in the Eastern world. I am here to say this hurts all humanity, not just the people of the East. As an antidote to Orientalism, I suggest that we consider the Cyrus cylinder, which I prefer to call by its Persian name, the Kurush cylinder. I have written my senior project paper about the Kurush cylinder, a Babylonian inscription which has survived from the ancient world. It is currently held in the British Museum. It was carved 2,500 years ago on the order of the Persian king Kurush the Great after he captured Babylon. The text, written in Kurush's voice, declares that people of different cultures and religions must coexist peacefully. As it is stated in the cylinder, Kurush also opposed slavery and freed thousands of slaves. The cylinder is considered by many to be a spirited piece of Persian propaganda. The cylinder is also viewed as an early assertion, the first perspective of basic human rights. Although these ideals are not reflected in the Iranian regime today, but they originated in ancient Persia and they have inspired many politicians since then, including the founding fathers of the United States, especially Thomas Jefferson, who told contemporaries that he was inspired by Kurush's philosophy of religious and cultural respect. In the present day, the cylinder continues to bring together Iranians from around the world. The Freedom Sculpture by Cecil Belmont, located on Santa Monica Boulevard in Century City, was inspired by the Kurush cylinder. Iranian Americans donated $2.2 million to create that sculpture, a pure gesture of gratitude and solidarity of the Iranian American community. The sculpture celebrates the harmony of values and beliefs between Iran, the country of our birth, and America, the country we now call home. The message conveyed by both the cylinder and the Freedom Sculpture is to be like my two mothers, to be kind, and to teach others to be kind. I am a better mother because of having two kind mothers in my life. And I am going to hand this kindness over every time I get a chance. When you are kind, not only does it change you, but it also changes the world around you. Let's change the world and make it a better place for our kids.
Abigail, I am so moved by your story, intertwined with the story of the Kurush cylinder. Riley Johnson's story was inspired in part by his participation in Through Positive Eyes, a photo storytelling project sponsored by the UCLA Art and Global Health Center at the Fowler Museum. Riley has been openly gay since he was in high school, but when he arrived at UCLA, his dream school, he boldly decided to rush a predominantly straight fraternity. Would his housemates in the fraternity be there to support him when he most needed them?
Everything is gonna be okay. Everyone has those days. Let me transport you back to high school, freshman year. I've just quit the Boy Scouts of America and to finally come out as gay. Surprise. I was nervous though. Were people gonna accept me, or were all those stories of isolation and rejection all too real? Well, 3 years later, I'm being crowned prom king of my high school, if that answers my question. This taught me the power of being true to oneself and living authentically. And by authentically, I mean, lip syncing in full Hannah Montana drag to Nobody's Perfect at my senior boys talent show. I'm nailing life, I thought to myself as I mouthed Miley Cyrus's words. But little did I know only how true those words would be, because everybody really has those days. So flash forward, it's fall quarter 2017. I'm a sophomore at my dream school, UCLA, and my gay ass is living in a frat house. Now, on this particular day, I was to have a checkup to see if my Truvada regimen was all Gucci. For those of you who do not know what Truvada is, just think birth control, but for preventing HIV, not pregnancies. So my nurses had informed me that things were going to be a little different. They're going to give me some updates over video conference, so I should find someplace private. I was thinking this is a little sketchy, but it was pre-final season and I needed to finish a paper on like Harvey Milk or something. So I found the perfect place where I'd both be undisturbed and able to write, on the 5th floor of the biomedical library, history and special collections. So I take a seat at one of the many empty tables, and then I get the call from nurse practitioner Gretchen. And she is like asking me some real bullshit questions, you guys, like, is everything going well at school? A little weird, I'm thinking. Then out of nowhere, she says, Riley, you've tested positive for HIV. It felt like my stomach had sunk to the bottom of that abandoned floor. And the only thing I could manage to do is to start sobbing and crawl over to the corner. But like, good thing no one was fucking there, right? So after a long, dramatic cry sesh, I've mustered enough energy to make it into the stairwell. And what do I find there? A HIV education ad staring me straight in the face. I just think to myself in this moment, how am I this cosmically screwed? Like, God, are you homophobic? Is this punishment for living my queer, sinful lifestyle? Well, my fabulous queer, sinful lifestyle, to be precise. So I'm a mess, a bit of a wreck, but I literally just need to make it back to my room, which is all the way across campus. Fortunately, students having public mental breakdowns is like a UCLA pastime, so no one was the wiser. But I'm suddenly struck with the fact that some people would be the wiser as I reach the front steps of my fraternity house. I am now faced with the uniquely difficult situation of concealing my newfound status to the 45 plus guys living in. Like Hannah Montana says, damn, I'm in a jam. Well, let's say if this whole thing did get out, how bad could it be? Immediately, my question is answered by an active yelling at a group of pledges driving his car. Yo, you better not dent my truck or I'm dropping all of you. Nope, definitely keeping this one to myself. But I was an open book. How was I gonna hide this from my literal brothers? So fight or flight response kicked in and I chose flight and quickly sprinted up the stairs into my room, just closed the door, just like praying that nobody had seen me and nobody was gonna interact with me. But of course, no less than 5 seconds later, I hear a knock on the door and it's my best friend, Jordan. And he knows something's not right. So he simply asked me, is everything all right? And in that moment, I froze. I was terrified. Will he ever speak to me again if he finds out? But my awful secret-keeping self just explodes and I'm like, no, everything's horrible. I proceed to tell him everything. And he responded the exact opposite of how society told me a straight frat boy would. He listened, never once judged me. He just comforted me and told me to rest up and to come to his and Caesar's room in a bit so they could check up with me. Jordan and Caesar were some of the first people I disclosed to, and their companionship, confidence, and acceptance would get me through one of the darkest periods in my life. Whenever I needed to talk to someone about all the new complicated issues that HIV had suddenly flung into my life, they would kick everyone else out of room 7 and just let me vent. But this did by no means make my next steps any easier. Initial diagnosis sucks, especially when it concerns hooking up and dating, something I had to learn the hard way. I was in this weird in-between stage where I wasn't exactly undetectable, but I still could not transmit the virus because I had such a small viral load due to my antiretroviral treatment. Now, undetectable, for those of you who do not know, means that a person has a small enough viral load so they cannot transmit. Hence, undetectable equals untransmittable. But this guy I've been talking to for a while didn't care and ghosted me because I disclosed my status to him. But don't worry, he went to USC, so in the end, would have never worked out. And once a douche, always a douche. Yep, I thought, I'm never going to have a normal life, am I? I'll probably die sad, gay, alone, and fucking HIV positive. So I took all that frustration and sadness, and I did what any reasonable UCLA undergrad would do. I blacked out hard on a winter quarter Saturday at my fraternity's alumni day, which is when both past and present alum and current brothers join at the house, and there are nice cocktails, kegs are flowing. So I was heavily intoxicated, may have face planted once or twice, and may have slapped one. Okay, I slapped 2 people and ended up butt naked, but it was at this lowest possible point that my fraternity family was there for me and took care of me. And in my inebriated state, I was reminded that I was never going to have a normal shot at life, and no one was ever going to fall in love with me. So my zodiac Cancer self just came out full force, and I just began to drunkenly sob and basically drunkenly spilled the beans to these guys about my status and shared with them the rough time I was going through. But of course, in classic Sigma Pi fashion, they did the exact opposite of what society told me straight fraternity bros are supposed to do. They consoled me, got me to laugh, and put me to bed. They never told anyone else or gossiped about me or ostracized me. No, they treated me like I was the same Riley they had bonded with and grown to love through this organization. Wow, I immediately thought the next day, Saturdays really are for the boys. And these dudes are keepers for life. My relationship with HIV is healthier than it has ever been. I'm undetectable, and I'm definitely getting way more action than before. And now the disclosure of my status just kind of pops out. Like I just casually slid it into conversation. This happened with both of my past roommates. I was just like, so I'm HIV positive, I take 1 pill, I'm all okay. And they were just like, oh, cool. Didn't know that, but you're looking healthy, so great. If there is one thing that contracting HIV has taught me, it's that viruses are very accepting. They infect and effect everyone and anyone quite unbiasedly. I now purposefully study in Biomed 5th floor, history and special collections because it shows me how far I've come. And I smile when I pass that HIV poster in the stairs. It took not only getting myself to a healthier mental and physical state with my HIV, but also the fact that others truly didn't treat me any differently, even with an HIV positive status. This helped me understand that I can live a normal life with HIV. I am still Riley. I am no different than I was before. Yes, I am stronger and wiser due to my status, but that does not change the fact that I am genuinely me. My advice to someone who might be in my shoes, like I was just 2 years earlier, would be to not be afraid, to reach out to others and to take it day by day. It really will get better, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Trust me, I'm dancing in it. Hannah Montana's words actually have a much more profound meaning because everybody gets shit thrown at them in life, but with the proper strength, courage, and support, everything's gonna be okay.
Next time you feel like it's just one of those days where you just can't seem to win, if things don't turn out the way you planned, figure something else out. Don't stay down. Try again.
Thank you, Riley, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today to celebrate the work of these 6 impressive seniors. And thanks to the staff at the Department of World Arts and Cultures and Dance, especially to our Zoom director, Mark Goebel, video lab manager, Will O'Laughlin, and Lynn Tatum for her assistance with marketing and public information.
Now that you've heard from the seniors, it's their turn to hear from you. Please feel free to raise your hand to offer a question or comment for any of the seniors. Mark will spotlight you and you can begin the conversation. Okay, this is the moment to, even in our home places, far from UCLA and the campus, to put our hands together and give a good old clap for the 6 people who just presented. Thank you so much, seniors. Woohoo! Congratulations. I want to explain how this can all work, by the way, everyone. Hello, it's fun to see faces start to emerge from the crowd. How this will work is that we can do a live conversation with each other by using one of 4 methods. And the first method that I'm going to suggest is if you go down in the lower part of your screen and you choose participants, you'll see that there's a set of icons at the bottom of the participant list, including a raised hand. And what happens is that raised hand indicates to me that you're ready to speak. So I can call you forth and you can have something to say. So there's that. You can also tip me off in a private chat if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to make. You can also, if you don't want to speak yourself, but I hope you will, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that for whatever reason, you're welcome to type in your question in the private chat and I'll read it out. Or you can be very low tech, which is that you can literally wave in the screen and we'll keep monitoring as well as we can the group of faces that are on the chat. And if we see your hand, we'll call you and ask you to be a part of it. So there we are. I'm going to begin actually with one question to the whole group, and then I'm going to go to someone who I think is all ready and prepared to speak to us. The first question, just so we can hear from each person, is to hear a little bit about your process. Each of you went through, a quarter-long process of taking something, a piece of research that you've been doing or a project you've been working on, and then converting that into this presentation. My guess is that each of you learned something else, something individual to you, something unique to you in the process. And I wondered if you might just take a moment to reflect on that and share with us what that one prominent thing is that you've learned from the process. And I'm just going to ask in the direction, in the order that you were speaking today. Lauren, from the place of your test kitchen, if you could tell us, something that you learned from the process.
Hi everyone. So I just learned through making my video that my journey with food is definitely a personal journey, and given the constraints of the COVID-19 situation, so shifting my diet to a plant-based diet has helped me stay energized and optimistic. And so I wanted to share with you something so close to me that I think could help everyone. So thanks for watching.
It was very fun to see the infomercial aspect of what you were doing, especially when it was inside kind of a play kitchen. And I wondered how that happened.
Well, it's funny because I was originally going to do a Zoom backdrop of a 50s kitchen, and I was playing with my boyfriend's little sister and found that she had a full set of 50s kitchen props, and they were pink too, so I knew I had to incorporate them somehow. And then I did a transition into a modern kitchen, which I think showed the evolution of my food journey and how food is changing in modern times. So I hope you liked it.
Yes, very much. Thanks so much, Lauren. Let's go to Ovie now. I want to ask you, Ovie, the same question really about what you discovered along the way as you were working in this process, which, by the way, we should acknowledge that the professor you were working with was
Peter Nabokov.
Shout out to
and he is watching, hopefully. I saw him at the beginning. Yes, I've had a great experience with the WAC department and with this project, obviously. I started at winter quarter just working with Peter. And so we went really in depth on an interview I did with my dad over winter break. That was like a 3-hour interview. And so it ended up being like a single space 70-page document with like my own analysis on my perspective and a lot of different things. And then this quarter, I was supposed to do the same thing with my mom, but due to coronavirus, we've done it electronically via email instead. So yeah, that was a little bit of a challenge, but David had reached out to me, and I was really happy to join these presentations and be able to share my story with everyone else. I learned so much. A lot of what I learned was really a personal perspective is really, it varies from person to person. And of course I knew that going into it because that was part of why I decided to do it. But I think a lot of my reasoning for it in the beginning was, oh, if I interview my parents, I'll find out like the truth, like this is what it was like when I was born. But then the more I got into it, the more I was like, wow, like I can do this forever, and I'll probably end up more confused than I was when I started. So that was it.
It's a lot to figure out from a single project in your senior year, but I can tell this is one that's going to keep on going for you. Kenny, talk to us about your discoveries along the way, because of course in your case you were changing media. You're someone who generally has worked in the realm of live performance. You're a writer, you're a person who's interested in words and literature, and you've made a film. So tell us, if you can, a little bit about what you discovered along the way.
Yeah, first of all, hi everyone. Saludos los de Mexicali, que ahí los veo. What I learned is kind of going back to that very basic statement where simplicity is key, and really just learning to be fruitful with what you have and just be able to adapt to the situation as much as possible. For example, I took a lot of movement that I had originally envisioned for this piece that I had created in the studio, and I altered it in a way that would then become the interventions for this filmic piece.
So, one of the things that amazed me about it was the setting. The first time I saw your raw footage and saw this room with a fireplace that's cut in half, it was so interesting, intriguing. How is that? Where is that in your house?
So first of all, this is my room. And on the other side, there is not only the other half of the chimney, but my sister's room. So it has been really quite the adventure being able to kind of make this huge space of something that is quite small, honestly. It's probably like I can put my hands to each side. But it has just been amazing. And then on top of that, we can thank the beautiful set design to my mother, actually, who I just told her a little bit of what I was doing in the vision. And then all of a sudden was just like finding things inside of the house. Actually, that curtain is from the living room, and these fake lilies were in the garage. So we were just creating this super communal project together. And I think that made it even more meaningful, which, by the way, hi, Mom.
Yes, thank you so much, Kenny. I want to get to Jacob next. And Jacob, thinking about the process you went through, because there was a long transformation of topics even, what you thought you were going to be writing about at first and what that grew into. Tell us a little bit about what you were discovering along the way and what some of your big discoveries were.
So at the beginning of this project, it was going to be about one specific type of trauma, which is sexual assault, which is more a tribute to my now ex-girlfriend, who at the time things were getting kind of pretty serious. But as David told me to reflect more on allyship, I decided to broaden the spectrum a bit and cover like more forms of allyship with different types of people. So I wanted to dig throughout my life to try and see the key moments in my life where allyship has arisen for me. And throughout treading my own history, I've kind of come to realize that allyship it's like kind of an ongoing process, like an ongoing journey, in the sense that you are constantly, there's constantly more to know, more to learn, and there's more ways you can better yourself as an ally and as a person in general. And fun fact about a certain part of that piece, the part of the piece in the middle where it starts about with my girlfriend, I didn't even tell you this, David. That was ad-libbed. Like most of it was ad-libbed. Well, not most of it, that specific part was, because the more I read that specific part, the more it just, for whatever reason, it just came across as insincere. And I felt that digging really deep from the heart and trying to just say what comes out of it, like, would feel more genuine than just reading something off a piece of paper.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's right at the last moment, we didn't know that, and now we do. Abigail, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. Interestingly, at the very start, you had moved to the Bay Area to be with your family. And we were worried about how we could keep you connected to the senior project. And here it was that we all turned out to be working on Zoom. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what your discoveries have been along the way, working from your very big, beautiful research paper that you had started, and then ultimately turning it into a presentation.
Yeah, first of all, I just say hi to everyone and thank you to everyone who could make it. And then thank you to my husband, who wasn't in the presentation, but he is presenting here. So yeah, I had to move to the Bay Area and then in this year. And didn't make a big difference because I already doing everything. So but I will come to UCLA campus for presentation. So we're doing it on Zoom. So the lesson I got from this quarter that how amazing the life and we can live, like amazing life and learn from just by sharing stories. It's like so everyone's story is so inspiring for me. Learned a lot from each of the students in this class.
Abigail, unfortunately, you're breaking up quite a bit, and I'm not sure people can hear you, but I'm getting the gist, which is an emphasis on personal story and the realization, which you've shared with us before in our class, that right along with the research about the Kourou cylinder, there's the personal story that brings it to life, that makes it meaningful, that allows you to talk about how it's meaningful to you personally, but also how it could be meaningful to large numbers of people who hear you talk about it. And so that's one of the things I learned from you, a discovery that I made because of your work in the senior project, that personal stories are so important. And speaking of personal stories, let's now turn to Riley if we could. Riley, I still remember the day when I first asked you if you would be interested in talking publicly about your HIV status. And you weren't quite so sure you were ready for that yet. Well, I think you're ready now. I get that feeling. I wonder if you could talk about how you got to this point, how you've made that transition and what you've discovered in the process.
Of course. Yeah, I think that it was definitely a journey for me, especially like just being diagnosed so young and not really having anyone else to really like look at and be like, oh, look, there's another young person with HIV. It was kind of like, oh, I really only think of this as something from the past and something that also that people like died from. So I think in the very beginning, initial diagnosis was really hard for me because I just really didn't have those role models. But something that's been so awesome is like that I've been able to really like pursue HIV advocacy just with getting healthier and becoming undetectable and like getting myself on a better like mental state and also like physical state. It just has helped me be more involved in the HIV community without it being like potentially triggering or anything. So that was really awesome. That was like a step within itself. And I really do thank you, David, for that. And of course, like Kelly and Melanie, all the people at the Art and Global Health Center, because I interned with the through Positive Eyes over fall and winter quarter. And that was such an impactful art exhibition to be a part of. And that really just like helped me be part of an HIV community and hear from other people's stories. And it was so powerful for me to kind of like be there as a witness. And I'm really fortunate that I kind of like got that introduction to it because it helped me be like, okay, what's working with these people's stories? What's resonating with an audience? And so that was really awesome. And then I think winter quarter, I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think let's just do it. And also I needed to finish a final project for David's class, Theorizing Arts Activism. So I was like, okay, this is going to work out perfect. Get two birds with one stone. So that's what I did for winter quarter. And then for spring quarter, I was like, got to graduate. So might as well make this my project. And also it's something that's so impactful to me because I just think it's really important for young people, especially young people who are HIV positive, and also just people in general, just to get a clue that, you know, having an HIV diagnosis isn't going to like detrimentally change your life. Like, you can still live a completely normal life with HIV, and you can actually live a very happy and fun life with HIV. And so that's what I wanted to show through my project. And so I'm just really happy for this experience and so thankful for everyone who was able to be there with me through it.
Thanks so much. I think what you just said you hope to do is exactly what you did. What a different era we're living in now than 40 years ago. And thank God for that. I am seeing, by the way, on the participant list that there are 2 people who've already put their hands up, which I love. And the very first person is the Associate Dean of the School of the Arts and Architecture, Victoria Marks. I love that she's already raised her hand, and I'd love to hear from her. And then right after her, Sophie Sheldon has also raised her hand.
Okay, I guess since my picture's up, I must be the one who's talking. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this late afternoon, early evening presentation. These were astonishing and amazing. And I'm noticing the ways in which each of these are very personal stories. And that in each of the stories, there's some navigation of a personal conflict that it's just very powerful. And they're not the kinds of final projects that I would have thought of as being, you know, academic final projects. So, I mean, it feels like these are the stories of becoming, and the ways that sometimes institutions can separate your real life from these things that you're learning. That's not the case here. So I'm wondering if you could just speak for a moment as you are completing your education at UCLA, what you've learned about education as it weaves itself, intertwines itself with your continuous becoming.
That's
is that clear enough?
I think so, and maybe I'll just call out 1 or 2 people out of the 6. Or
that sounds great.
But Kenny, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I have a feeling that you might have something to say about this, and then maybe Ovie could speak after.
Hi, yes. I don't know. It was an interesting space for me to create this film because it comes in with using this myth of Icarus and Daedalus as a point of departure, actually, to investigate what intergenerational trauma is, especially with my experience as being a first-gen student. So I feel a lot of the times when we hear stories about migration, we tend to focus on the border or that very geographical instance, but a lot of it I feel is also psychological and has to do with experiences that are both pre and post migration that have to do with the way parents were raised. And so it is all intergenerational, and that really allowed me to begin my meditation on what intergenerational trauma is. And I think that's one of the reasons why I chose to make something that was surrealist, or sometimes I say a bit magical realist, because through the process, I went thinking that I'm not supposed to represent this trauma. That shouldn't be my place, but it should be one of really trying to understand it and not make something that is a one-to-one translation of what trauma is. And for me, this artistic process in itself, besides affording me that, has allowed me to really play with aesthetics. And it is actually the last kind of like art piece that I give to WAC department as I catapult myself to the School of the Arts Institute in Chicago for grad school.
Yay! Yeah, it's such exciting news, and we of course have been celebrating that news already. But for some people who are online now, they're probably just hearing that you're embarking on your artist life, which is going to be amazing. Ovie, if you could address Victoria Marks's question as well.
Yeah.
Do you want me to restate it, or you got it?
You can restate it briefly if you don't mind, because I want to make sure I answer it properly.
I'm just thinking about that this is the culmination of an academic program, and yet these are such personal stories. So how is education, like what have you learned about education in terms of your very personal experience of life. Like, what is, you know,
Yeah, I got,
sorry.
no, you're totally fine. I understand.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I am so grateful for the WAC department. I actually found it by accident, and I didn't know what I was expecting, and I did not think I was going to get in. And then somehow I ended up in David's class a couple years ago, and it was so amazing. But one thing that is 100% like at WAC's core is that it's not similar to other academic disciplines, which is what I love about it. And also, I don't know, I think there's something so important about the fact that all of our professors and all of our staff and all of our teachers really do care about student learning. But more than that, it's student learning in the real world and how you want to do it. Like, this presentation obviously is different from like the typical education, but I'm just thinking back to all my classes that I've like had the opportunity to take and all these projects that I've done. And there has been so much freedom to create how you want to create and like tell your own story. And I think that there's so much importance in that because it allows us to have that freedom that I think it's not an opportunity in other departments. So I'm really grateful for that. And it allowed me to really learn a lot about myself, which I think is one of the most important things. Yeah, thank you so much for your question.
You know, and in your
Thank
case,
you.
yeah, I'm so appreciating the ways in which the ethnographic work of this amazing anthropologist in the department, Peter Nabokov, influences your work in excavating your own life and your family's life. And so the methods of anthropology influencing this self-reflection seems really like an important part of your journey in WAC as well. I want to move now, if I could, to Sophie, who's been raising her hand. This is Sophie Sheldon, who's a senior student. So let's get Sophie in. And we're down to our last few minutes. So if there's something that you feel compelled to add now, this would be a good moment to raise your hand in the participant chat. Sophie.
Hi, everybody. Hello. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who shared today. I was so impressed by everybody's presentation compared to, you know, what we first, or at least what I first heard from your original ideas and everything. So it was really, really exciting to see the final product. My question is actually kind of similar to Victoria Mark's, but you know, the senior project is such like a culmination of kind of everything, or this whole experience that you've had at UCLA with World Arts and Cultures. And I'm curious to know if there's maybe a specific thing that you'll take away from this project going into this next sort of new chapter of your life, whatever that may be. So I'd love to hear from some of you.
Maybe some new folks. I'm waiting for the impulse. All right, I'm going to call you out.
Hi. Oh, can I go?
Yes.
Hi. So I am not a student at UCLA. In fact, I live in Florida, but I found out about this event through Eventbrite. I just graduated from Daytona State College with my degree in education. And, you know, with the whole pandemic thing, I was just looking for online things to do, and I found this, and I'm so glad I watched it because I learned so much and got to see so many creative people. So I am glad that despite this whole pandemic thing going on, that you were able to put this together and give it your all, despite like limitations. So thank you so much. It was really awesome.
I'm so glad that you came to visit. You know, and
thank you for coming.
Things. Normally we would do a live performance and it could only be people who are within 10 or 15 miles of UCLA.
Right. Right.
I love that. You're not Ezra by any chance, are you?
Oh, yeah, that's my name.
That's you. Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I see now that there's a chat here, a request to speak, and you have, which is great. Yep. I think maybe just at that moment when we should come back around to Dan Fruit himself. Dan is the chair of the department. He has been co-leading this senior project sequence. And actually, it should be mentioned that Dan dove in to do this as an extra overload of his schedule because he believes in senior projects and believes in this group of students. So Dan, here's a chance for you perhaps to raise a question or to cap off in some other way.
Well, thank you and congratulations, everybody. What a fantastic evening, and what a great way to cap off the year and cap off this very, very strange quarter. I'm so proud to have spent this time with you and to be able to have you represent the department in the way that you have. I guess I'm just curious to know how being with each other through this process has influenced some of you and informed some of your work. Let's just get one or two people to respond to that, if you don't mind, about how it was doing this on your own and then also collectively with your peers.
I do want to mention that I had actually just texted Riley before this and mentioned we were both on the same floor freshman year of like the dorms, and we did not talk to each other. But honestly, being in this senior projects class, I've gotten to know Riley so much more, and I appreciate Riley so much. And I feel like this, the culminating piece that we have in front of us today wouldn't have been done without the support of Riley and of course of everybody else with their feedback, because it really made it seem like we were a strong cohort and we were there in person with each other and we began to grow on each other. And that helped in this moment where isolation is the biggest component of our lives.
It's so true. Yeah. Others who might want to weigh in here about your collective and how it
Yeah,
feels together.
I can piggyback off of that. Thanks, Kenny, for your comment. That's so sweet. But I was actually literally about to say, like, Kenny helped so much. Not only me, but like I think everyone in this class can attest to how much Kenny's helped us. But that's just like what's so awesome about WAC is like it's such a community, and it's so nice to have, you know, there's 40,000 people that go to UCLA, and it's so nice to have, like, you know, our 30-person classes, and like this class was what, 5 people, 6 people, and so it was just really nice to kind of have people that you wouldn't have normally hung out with if you know, were doing club activities or outside, but you're kind of forced to hang out with them because of your small classroom. And it was so interesting to see how much like we kind of got along and how much we were able to really like add to each other, not only just through like suggestions and stuff, but I think it was really just through motivation. And that was what kind of like coming back from it, having finished this project finally and looking backwards to the beginning, it really has been like Lauren, Abby, Jacob, Ovie, like all of you, Sophie even, who was in our class for only like a week and we miss her so much, but all of them were able to kind of just really motivate us. And that's what I love so much about WAC is it's such a strong community, and it's just something that's super unique. So I've just been so privileged to be a part of it.
That's a really nice note to end on. Thank you so much, Riley. Thank you, everybody. I also want to say, as with any production, there are people behind the scenes who are making. So we really want to shout out to Mark Goebel, who is our Zoom director. I want to thank Will O'Laughlin, who is our video manager, and he's doing a lot of programming and switching behind the scenes. And also Lynn Tatum is behind the scenes working with us as well. And she's done all of our public information and marketing. I want to encourage you all 51 of you who are still with us, to check out the website that the group has put together. There it is, it's in the chat now. You'll find a lot of information from everybody there, and it's a great way to keep up what everybody is doing. David, do you have some last words for us?
Just a big thank you and lots of love to everyone, and congratulations to the 6 seniors.
Congratulations, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.